Hi, everybody. How are you doing? It, for me, has been a really busy time of late, and I'm actually super grateful for it. The other thing that, because of it being so busy and whatnot, my guides and the animals have been helping me get back in touch with one of my favorite things to do, which is to read. And I've actually been reading a lot lately, and I'm really, really excited about what I've read. And I wanted, and they wanted me too, to share with you the books, some of the books that I've been reading of late. Usually on my Instagram, I will share what I'm reading of late. My Instagram and Facebook, actually, to be fair. And I haven't even had time to like take a picture of a cover and then do a little synopsis, except for this first book. This is the first book that I'll get into here in just a second. Is one that I've just absolutely loved. All the books, just know I'm one of those people that when I love a book, I like love a book. If I don't like a book, then I'm like, oh, then it's just not for me. So all of these books I've loved. I very rarely read a book that isn't for me, only because I love to read about books. So I try to figure out well ahead of time, like what would really like what resonates and whatnot. And my guides have lately been kind of helping me pick in that the things that I think are interesting, and I go ahead and request from the library. Sometimes I have to buy them, but when I request them from the library, it's interesting to me what shows up and when it shows up because the guides are going ding, 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 ding right here. So I think that's pretty cool. So the first book I want to share with all of you, and I did, like I said, do an Instagram and Facebook post on this, what is a book called Power. Oops, make sure you can see it. Power by Kemi Nekvapil. It is a woman's guide to living and leading without apology. I love this book. I am a fan of hers now. I cannot believe how helpful this is. So she starts off with with using power as an acronym. And it's presence, ownership, wisdom, equality, and responsibility. Every chapter in this book is relatively short, and every chapter ends with a couple of questions, usually three, that she wants you to answer, and you kind of journal your way through the book. I'm not a big journaler. I probably need to be, but I'm not. I do a lot of automatic writing with my guides. So I found this to be some really cool exercises to actually do some automatic writing with my inner self, with my inner child, as well as with my guides. And every now and then, Lucas, and then some of my other pups that are in spirit, and my bunny that's in spirit. Anyway, Power by Kemi Nekvapil. If you are really if you're feeling stuck, or you're at a place where you know you want to grow and you just can't quite figure out how, or you're just tired, I would highly recommend you check it out. And check out her Instagram, all that good stuff. Kemi Nekvapil. She's Australian. She's been, well, Nigerian. She's a lot of things. It doesn't matter. None of them. It's all labels, but she's just amazing. That label is great. And I highly recommend Power by Kemi Nekvapil. The next book I want to say in these next three books, it's so interesting how they all kind of came into my life at the exact same time. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? It stars Marlee Matlin, and it's, I think, hopefully I got her last name said right. I might not have, forgive me. It's relatively old. Sometimes it can be hard to find depending on what platform wants to serve it and what platform doesn't. And it's all about quantum physics and about how the intuitive aspect actually plays into quantum physics. So one of the women that appears in that movie is Lynne McTaggart, and she wrote a book called The Field, and it's the quest for the secret force of the universe. And there is a lot of science in here. There's a lot of research. And basically, she, as a journalist, is documenting what all of this intuitive aspect is really about. It's not woohoo, it's actually science. And when you actually think about science and being integrated with the natural world, it's really kind of interesting. And this showcases many, many studies over the course of 200 years that people have been studying this. And to some degree, a lot of it comes to light and then it gets shut down and put away and hidden, and then it gets brought to light. Very similar to, if you haven't seen Michael Pollan's documentary series on Netflix about psychedelics and drugs that come from mushrooms, as well as other natural things, and the ability that they have to help us, and how all that research came to light, and then it slowly got pushed down, and now it's coming to light again. This is much the same. It just has to do with a lot of the connectivity, intuitiveness, how we work with one another, how we're all connected. I just cannot, really, really good. Now, if you're not super, super into science, there is a lot of research and methodologies and whatnot like that. You can skim through that and still get a lot out of this book, because I did that. I skimmed a lot of that aspect of it, but I still felt, for me personally, it was really validating, because I know that what I do in communicating with animals and communicating with my spirit guides on your behalf, I know that it's real. I don't have any way to prove it to you outside of the information that I receive. I have no idea what I'm saying, but it makes sense to you. That's my only proof. This gave me a little bit more proof, but I'll say, not that I needed it. It's just rather enjoying to know that I am not alone in what I'm feeling. So there's that. The next book that I read, and I just finished it yesterday, is called The Extended Mind by Annie Murphy Paul. This book I read on the heels of, I'm going to do it in tandem. I read on the heels of this book, Stolen Focus, Why You Can't Pay Attention and How to Think Deeply Again by Johann. Both books really talk to how the mind works, how we set ourselves up for, I don't want to say the word failure, but how we set ourselves up to trip, how we set ourselves up to not embrace everything that our mind is actually capable of doing, why our mind is capable of doing what it's capable of doing, and what exactly is the brain in relationship to our bodies. That part I found super interesting, particularly in The Extended Mind. She talks a lot about how the body actually is the one to sense the things that are happening around us. And then it feeds up to the brain, and the brain starts to put things together based on experiences, memories, what we know. So this isn't necessarily a muscle, it's really an organ. And this isn't necessarily a computer. There's a lot of analogies that she talks about that we've created that aren't necessarily true. It actually, maybe it's a processor. I don't even want to put a label on it for, because I just don't want to get ahead of everybody. But it's so fascinating to me how much, and in this book, she talks about thinking with our bodies, thinking with our surroundings, and thinking through our relationships, or with our relationships. And those are the 3 sections of the book. And she talks a lot about gestures, hand gestures, and thinking with our bodies, sensations and movement, and then thinking with our surroundings was probably my favorite section, because it had to do with natural, being outside in nature, what all nature actually does with us from a biological, physiology, psychology, psychological, mental, emotional, all the things. And just even how we build spaces, just the whole thing is fascinating. Groupthink, there's a lot of information in here. I actually feel like this, as you can see, is a library book. I actually may buy a copy, because there's so much in here that I have a feeling with the direction that my talks are going as far as connectivity goes. I have a feeling there's a lot in here that can help beef those talks up, even share even more. So The Extended Mind. The next one, like I said, was Stolen Focus. He is such an amazing writer. I cannot recommend this book enough as well. This talks a lot about how, since the Industrial Revolution, our focus has slowly moved away from us, stolen, as he says. Of course, social media being a huge exacerbator of that issue. But it's not just that. It's a lot of things. The fact that we don't teach our kids anymore to play, that a lot of kids, I didn't realize this, a lot of kids don't have recess anymore. This book talks about how, in order for you to really kind of learn and process, it helps if you move a little bit, like I'm doing right now. This talks a lot about many of the things that we no longer allow ourselves to do. One of those being play, one of those being sleep. Huge, right? We need sleep. There's so much in this book about how much our focus has been slowly walking away from us, I'm going to say. We don't read. We don't read for long periods of time. We can't, things that manipulate us, how some of the algorithms actually will continually serve us content that's more negative and negative and negative, even if you start out on a positive note, just to keep you watching. There's some really interesting data and some really interesting facts in here, but stress and diets and evolutionary stuff, just the fact that we're confining ourselves physically, like I said, this is interesting. And there's an opportunity in here for what he calls attention rebellion. And that's taking our attention back. And he's got some really good tips on how to do that. So Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. Highly recommend this. So well written, so good. Couldn't put it down. Want to give it to everybody, but I don't think anybody that I know of is going to be receptive to me telling them this. So we'll just let them find that on their own, but I cannot recommend it enough. So what's so interesting is these books have a lot of, these past books that I've talked about, have a lot of connection to nature and how important it is for us to get outside, to really look at native plants, the grasses, the trees, the wildlife hiding, the insects in there, all those types of things, and really understand that. And part of what Annie Murphy Paul talks about, I get so excited about books. Annie Murphy Paul talks about is when we're outside in nature, we actually see things in such a saturated way, our cameras can't even capture it, which is so interesting to me. And those colors and how that plays within the brain. Oh, fascinating. So I'm so relieved that while all this was going on, my guides also had me read this book, A World on the Wing by Scott Weidensaul. It is the global odyssey of migratory birds. I love birds. And I'm sure many of you actually find a lot of symbolism and a lot of comfort in the birds that visit you, even in your dreams. This book is so wonderful. And it's, again, and so well written. I also have to just do a little shout out to one of my favorite organizations is Alaska Geographic, and they are mentioned first in the book. And what's so cool is that the study that they talk about in the first section of the book in Alaska, I actually met one of the park rangers in Denali that was part of this study. So I'm just like so excited. Anyway, but he talks about a handful of different species of birds and how they are being threatened and many times being, I don't want to say saved because we're not there yet, but there's focus being paid on them. And he also brings with him a sense of awe, which is so important when we're working with animals and we're working with spirit guides and being a human, the divine having a human experience, is this sense of awe. In fact, the last chapter where he talks about this particular species of falcons that that migrates through a country that I had never heard of, which I'm not, of course, going to remember right now, but he talks about seeing these hundreds of thousands of falcons lift into the air, and he's gobsmacked in the sense of awe that he gets to see this, that this is happening on this planet. It just, now that the geese, of course, are moving and have been migrating, and every time I see a whole flock of geese, and geese, right, for us are regular, many for us, are regular, normal beings. But now I have this whole new sense of awe about it. And I'm just looking to see if I can find of course I cannot find the country because like I said, Nagaland. Nagaland is the country that he's talking about, this particular species of falcon. And what's so cool is he talks about how people are stepping forward to really help these different species. There's a woman in the Nagaland that actually, out of nowhere, just actually did a whole bunch of stuff within her community to help these birds. And I hope they are falcons and not hawks. It'll be sad. But anyway, you get the idea. A World on the Wing. Everything you wanted to know about birds, you probably didn't, and maybe not everything, but really very, very interesting conversation in there. All right, lastly, the last book I have to highlight is actually super interesting because a friend of mine told me about it because she came to visit me. And she's like, oh my gosh, have you heard about this particular farm? And it's in the town where I grew up. Well, actually, we come to find out it's not in the town where I grew up, but it's in the general area of where I grew up, which is south. I grew up in West Michigan. This book takes place in Southwest Michigan, in Lawton, Michigan, and it's called The Elves of Lily Hill Farm. It's by Penny Kelly, and it is actually about the elves that live on this farm. And what I thought was really interesting about this is the absolute integration of nature, elementals, and humans. What her experience is in grazing grapes in Lawton, Michigan, is in listening to the elves and the elementals and what the earth needs and how we can use the earth, actually produced better grapes, healthier for us too. So it's really interesting how this all really worked together. It's a delightful story. It's a true story. It's a memoir. There's so much in here. It just was really refreshing to read this because I typically read before I go to bed. Really, really refreshing to read this every night before I went to bed. So I highly recommend it. So again, 6 books right now. They may be really good gifts or just really good for your own mind, body, and spirit. If you have any book recommendations that you want to share, please leave them in the comments below. I'm happy I love getting book recommendations. I love talking about books. And I'm curious to see where the animals and the guides are leading you as far as what you're reading right now. So please go ahead and share. And if you have anything else, just let me know, and I will hopefully see you soon. Y'all take care. Thanks.